There are moments in life when time is not merely passing, but shifting, and beloved, this is one of those moments. And you are not simply approaching another calendar year. You are approaching a gate, and a gate is not just an entrance. A gate is a point of decision. A gate determines what enters and what is kept out. It determines access. It determines movement. It determines territory. And before a new year opens its doors, heaven is calling its people to stand watch at the entrance. And not casually, and not carelessly, but with spiritual authority. And for the year 2026 is not something you simply drift into. And you must enter it intentionally, and you must enter it prayerfully, and you must enter it armed with divine instruction. And because whatever you fail to confront at the gate may confront you later in the year, and this is why this prayer is mandatory, and not optional, and not occasional, and mandatory. And there are some seasons that demand more than good intentions. They demand warfare, and the enemy does not wait for January to begin his assignments. Plans are often laid in advance. Traps are often arranged before your feet ever arrive. But I came to remind you of a glorious truth. Darkness may prepare, but heaven prepares too. And heaven always prepares greater. And before you were born, God knew your days. And before 2026 was written on any human calendar, it was already seen by eternal eyes. And nothing about your future is hidden from God. And nothing, and not the opportunities, and not the battles, and not the relationships, and not the open doors, and not the attacks, and not the victories. And because God sees ahead, prayer is your invitation into divine alignment. And prayer is not informing God, and prayer is agreeing with Him, and prayer is stepping into what heaven has already established. And this is why you cannot be silent at the gates, and you cannot enter a new year asleep. And some people enter years emotionally excited, but spiritually unprepared. And they celebrate at midnight, but never pray at midnight. And they make resolutions, but neglect revelation. And then they wonder why cycles repeat. But repetition is often the fruit of unchallenged patterns. And until something is confronted spiritually, it often remains operational naturally. And so today, this moment, wherever you are listening from, you must make a decision. And I will not enter 2026 empty-handed, and I will not cross over without prayer, and I will not allow fear, confusion, delay, or sabotage to greet me at the entrance. And I will meet my future with authority. And the scripture says, "Lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be ye lifted up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in." And notice that gates respond to command, and gates are addressed, and spiritual entrances are spoken to. And this means your mouth matters, and your words matter, and your declarations matter, and too many people are passive with their future. But passivity is expensive, and silence has consequences, and there are doors that only open when faith speaks. And there are battles that only shift when authority rises, and there are atmospheres waiting for a sound. And not a weak sound, and not a fearful sound, and a sound of certainty, and a sound of covenant, and a sound of someone who knows who their God is. And I feel in my spirit that many listening to this message have been through years of unnecessary warfare, and cycles that seemed endless, and battles that drained you, and disappointments that made you cautious, and delays that made you question timing. But hear me carefully, and you are not entering 2026 as a victim of past seasons. And you are entering as one who has survived what should have destroyed you, and you are entering with testimony, and you are entering with scars that became evidence of survival, And you are entering wiser and stronger and more discerning and less distracted and more dependent on God, and the enemy thought prior years would break your faith. And instead, they refined it, and he thought pressure would make you quit, and instead, pressure taught you prayer. And now, here you are, and still standing, and still believing, and still expecting, and that alone is proof that grace has carried you. And so command the gates, and command them, and stand spiritually and declare, and 2026, you will not swallow my peace, and you will not steal my focus, and you will not rob my purpose, and you will not carry over old afflictions, and you will not host repeated battles, and you will not recycle expired pain, and no, and I sanctify this year before I step into it, and I consecrate its months, and I anoint its days, and I surrender its unknowns to God, and January belongs to God, and February belongs to God, and March belongs to God, and April belongs to God, and May belongs to God, and June belongs to God, and July belongs to God, and August belongs to God, and September belongs to God, and October belongs to God, and November belongs to God, and December belongs to God, and every quarter, and every week, and every appointment, and every conversation, and every transaction, and every journey, and every decision, and covered, and submitted, and guarded, and ordered, and you must pray over what you have not yet seen. And that is faith, and faith does not wait for visible evidence before it acts, and faith moves ahead, and faith prepares, and faith speaks into tomorrow, and this is why this prayer is mandatory, and because prayer builds what panic destroys, and prayer creates stability, and prayer establishes boundaries, and prayer sharpens discernment, and prayer grants access to wisdom you do not naturally possess. And there are some mistakes you will avoid in 2026 simply because you prayed, and not because you knew everything, but because prayer positioned you to hear, and prayer is not merely protection from attack, and it is protection from misalignment. And some of the greatest dangers are not evil looking, and sometimes what harms you arrives disguised as opportunity. And not every open door is divine, and not every invitation is necessary, and not every relationship is assigned. And this is why you need discernment, and discernment grows where prayer lives. And if you do not pray, you may confuse motion for progress, and activity for assignment, and excitement for direction, but when you pray, fog lifts, and you begin to sense what belongs and what does not. And you begin to recognize what carries peace and what carries pressure, and let me tell you something powerful. And peace is not weakness, and peace is evidence of divine order, and anything that constantly steals your peace deserves examination. And because God is not the author of confusion, and so as you stand at the gates of 2026, do not just ask for things, and ask for clarity, and ask for discipline, and ask for holiness, and ask for wisdom, and ask for restraint, and ask for courage, and ask for obedience, and because blessings without discipline can become burdens, and opportunities without wisdom can become traps, and expansion without character can become collapse. And so let your prayer be complete, and not shallow, and not rushed, and deep, and intentional, and consecrated. And perhaps someone listening is saying, I feel unprepared, I feel behind. But time in God's hands is never wasted. And He can recover what seemed lost, and He can accelerate what looked delayed, and He can restore what appeared irreparable. And do not measure your future by your previous timeline, and measure it by divine ability, and God is not limited by what did not happen. And He is Lord over what can happen next, and so do not approach 2026 with dread, and approach it with reverence, and approach it with readiness, and approach it with prayer, and command the gates, and stand at the threshold and declare, and I enter with favor, and I enter with wisdom, and I enter with strength, and I enter with divine health, and I enter with provision, and I enter with protection, and I enter with purpose, and I enter with peace, and I enter under divine covering. And whatever is not appointed for me shall not prevail against me, and whatever is assigned to distract me shall fail. And whatever is designed to derail me shall collapse, and for I do not walk alone, and the one who goes before me is already in my tomorrow. And because he is there, I do not fear what is ahead. And 2026 is not a mystery to heaven, and if heaven is already there, then I can move forward with confidence. And so pray, and pray before midnight, and pray after midnight, and pray when you feel strong, and pray when you feel weak, and pray until your atmosphere changes, and pray until your spirit settles, and pray until faith rises again. And this prayer is mandatory, and not because God is harsh, but because God is inviting you into partnership. And he is saying, meet me at the gate, and meet me there before the year opens, and meet me there before the first day begins, and meet me there with expectation, and meet me there with surrender, and meet me there with authority. And when you do, you will not enter 2026 like everyone else, and you will enter marked and covered, and positioned, and aligned, and ready, and the gates are before you, and now speak, and let the year hear your voice. And amen. You are not simply approaching another calendar year, you are approaching a spiritual gate. A gate represents transition, access, and decision. It determines what is allowed to enter and what must remain outside. In the spirit, gates are places of authority where outcomes can be influenced before events unfold. This is why entering 2026 must be done intentionally, not casually. A new year is more than dates changing on a calendar. It is the opening of new opportunities, battles, assignments, and divine encounters. What you permit at the entrance often affects the rest of the journey, which is why preparation matters deeply. And before stepping into a new season, prayer must come first. Prayer is the spiritual foundation that prepares your heart, aligns your decisions, and places your future under divine direction. Many enter new seasons with excitement, but without preparation, hoping things will improve automatically. Prayer breaks that pattern by inviting wisdom before confusion, peace before pressure, and clarity before decisions arise. It is not merely a ritual, but an act of surrender and partnership with God. Through prayer, unseen battles are addressed before they appear naturally, and your spirit becomes sensitive to divine timing, instruction, opportunities, and necessary corrections. And you must not approach your future with silence or hesitation. Spiritual authority is exercised through faith, filled prayer, and bold declaration. Commanding the gates means speaking with confidence over what lies ahead, refusing fear, delay, confusion, and repeated cycles to gain entrance into your year. Your words carry significance when aligned with faith and divine truth. Many situations remain unchanged because they are never confronted spiritually. Authority requires intention, awareness, and confidence in God's power. When you pray with boldness, you establish spiritual boundaries, invite divine order, and position yourself to walk into new seasons with strength, confidence, and readiness. And each month of 2026 should be surrendered intentionally to God before it unfolds. Consecration means setting apart your days, plans, relationships, goals, and decisions under divine covering. Instead of leaving the year open to uncertainty, you dedicate every season to higher purpose and guidance. Pray over January before it begins and continue through each month with intentional focus. Cover your work, finances, family, health, and future assignments in prayer. This practice creates spiritual awareness and discipline, reminding you that your life is not governed by chance. A consecrated year reflects dependence, preparation, order, and spiritual intentionality. And not every opportunity is meant for you, and not every open door carries divine purpose. Discernment helps you recognize the difference between what is beneficial and what is distracting. Without spiritual sensitivity, excitement can be mistaken for direction, and pressure can be confused with purpose. Prayer sharpens your ability to sense what aligns with your calling and what could lead to delay or unnecessary struggle. Discernment protects your peace, your focus, and your progress by helping you avoid misaligned relationships, wrong decisions, and premature moves. It allows you to move wisely, carefully, and with greater spiritual awareness. And entering 2026 requires more than hope. It requires spiritual preparation and intentional alignment. To be covered means placing every part of your life under divine protection and guidance. Alignment means ensuring your desires, plans, and priorities reflect God's direction rather than personal impulse or pressure. Preparation involves building discipline, strengthening faith, and becoming ready for both opportunities and challenges ahead. A prepared person is less vulnerable to distraction, confusion, and repeated mistakes. When you enter a new year covered, aligned, and prepared, you move with greater confidence, clearer vision, stronger focus, and deeper awareness of your spiritual responsibilities.